the music stopped. Elara's fingers froze on the strings of her battered guitar, her haunting melody fading into the night. The air around her thickened with an unspoken tension. Across the dimly lit street, a black car idled, its engine purring like a predator waiting to strike. She could feel the eyes on her, cold, calculating. Someone was watching. She had been found. Before we dive into the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from and enjoy the story. In that single moment, everything changed. The notes of her song, once a comforting cadence of hope and struggle, now became an omen of danger. The neon glow of Austin's underbelly cast long shadows that danced like ghosts, hinting at secrets that refused to remain hidden. Elara's heart pounded in time with the city's restless beat, and in that pulse, she sensed that her life was about to be rewritten in ways she could scarcely imagine. Elara knew she shouldn't have stopped playing. The music was her armor, her distraction, her escape from a past marred by loss and betrayal. Yet something about that ominous black car and its silent observers sent a chill down her spine. The Austin night was alive with its usual chaos. Drunken laughter spilling from dimly lit bars, the distant wail of sirens, and the ever-present hum of a city that never truly slept. But tonight, amidst the clamor, there was an undeniable stillness, as if the world was holding its breath. She pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders, feeling the weight of every memory etched into the creases of its fabric. Every chord she strummed carried fragments of her past, a past filled with broken promises, lost loves, and secrets too painful to name. And yet, tonight, that past was catching up with her. Without warning, the car door opened. Out stepped a woman whose silhouette was as striking as it was intimidating. Dressed in impeccably tailored attire, her presence exuded an air of authority and mystery. Serafina, the name itself was a promise of both beauty and danger. Elara had seen her before, glimpsing her through the tinted windows of exclusive lounges and the rarefied air of high-rise balconies that overlooked the city. Tonight, Serafina strode purposefully toward her, eyes glinting with determination. "You're coming with me," Serafina declared, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Elara's first instinct was to flee, to run back into the comforting anonymity of the night. But something in the fire of Serafina's gaze made her pause. Beneath that command lay an unspoken promise, a spark of opportunity that whispered of a chance to finally confront the ghosts that haunted her. Curiosity, mingled with a tinge of defiance, held her in place. The drive was swift and silent, punctuated only by the rhythmic hum of tires on pavement. The car wound its way through the city, past flickering neon signs and closed storefronts, until it finally arrived at a towering penthouse overlooking Austin. The building was a fortress of glass and steel, its windows reflecting the city lights like shards of a shattered dream. Inside, the atmosphere was worlds apart from the gritty streets Elara knew so well. The penthouse was a realm of opulence, polished marble floors, chandeliers dripping with crystals, and walls adorned with priceless art. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and a quiet murmur of conversation. Here, amidst clinking glasses of champagne and whispered laughter, Elara felt simultaneously out of place and inexplicably drawn. She was led into a grand sitting room, where she was introduced to a small, eclectic group. First was Caspian, a brooding artist whose eyes burned with both passion and cynicism. His words, sharp as a sculptor's chisel, belied a vulnerability that few ever glimpsed. Next came Lucian, a silent observer with an almost otherworldly calm. His presence was like a quiet tide, ever-present yet subtle in its influence. And then, finally, there was Rhys Thorne. Rhys, heir to the formidable Thorne Empire, was a man burdened by the weight of legacy and expectation. His dark eyes held a storm of conflicted emotions, a blend of resignation and quiet rebellion. He barely acknowledged her presence at first, his attention lost in thought as he traced the rim of his glass. It was clear that in the world of wealth and privilege, Elara was an anomaly, a wild, unpredictable element that threatened to upend the delicate balance of power. "She's perfect," Serafina said, her voice light but edged with conviction as she regarded Elara and then Rhys. "Don't you think, Rhys?" When Rhys's eyes met hers, there was a momentary flicker, a spark that was as fleeting as it was potent. Elara braced herself, aware that every glance, every whispered word, was part of a game far larger than any one person could comprehend. The plan, as Serafina had outlined, was deceptively simple. The Thornes needed a distraction, a +1 who could blend seamlessly into their exclusive social circles, a figure who would deflect suspicion from the family's more questionable dealings. To the elite, it was a Cinderella transformation, a street musician transformed into a sophisticated art consultant with an enigmatic past, and in that role, Elara was to become Leela. For days, Elara wrestled with the proposition. To assume a false identity meant donning a mask, one that would conceal her true self behind layers of silk and carefully curated elegance. In a small, cramped apartment tucked away in one of Austin's less fashionable neighborhoods, she began her metamorphosis. Denim was replaced with gowns, the rough edges of her past smoothed into polished veneers. Her guitar was tucked away, and in its place she carried a portfolio of art and contrived credentials. The transformation was swift, yet not without its inner turmoil. Every brushstroke of makeup, every carefully chosen accessory, felt like a betrayal to the raw authenticity that had always defined her. But beneath the surface, a deeper motive stirred. The Thornes were not simply a wealthy family. There was something dark and insidious buried within their legacy. Rumors whispered of ruthless business practices, of secrets hidden behind the glittering facade of power. And as Elara delved deeper into their world, she began to uncover clues that linked them to the painful events of her own past. Thus, she agreed to the charade, not for wealth, not for the promise of love, but for the truth. The truth that could shatter the carefully constructed illusion of the Thorne Empire, and, in doing so, reveal the scars of her own hidden history. The night of the gala arrived with the elegance and pomp one would expect from a family of such stature. The Thorne estate was transformed into a shimmering palace, with the grand ballroom alive with laughter, music, and the subtle interplay of shadow and light. Guests in designer gowns and bespoke suits mingled beneath towering crystal chandeliers, their conversations a symphony of polite intrigue and veiled ambition. Leela, Elara's new persona, stepped into this world with calculated grace. She moved through the throng like a wisp of smoke, her eyes ever watchful. Each encounter was measured, each smile rehearsed. Yet behind that carefully maintained facade, Elara's mind raced with plans and suspicions. Every corner of the ballroom, every whispered conversation, hinted at secrets too dangerous to ignore. It wasn't long before she caught the attention of Magnus Thorne, the formidable patriarch of the family. Magnus was a man of few words, his presence commanding, and his eyes sharp as a blade. He extended a measured smile when greeting Leela, but in that smile was a fleeting moment of recognition, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken. Elara's heart quickened. Was it merely a reflection of suspicion, or did he sense the truth behind the mask? Rhys, too, was an enigma. Throughout the evening, his gaze was fixed on her, a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and a touch of sorrow. Their interactions were brief yet charged with an intensity that defied the superficial niceties of high society. In quiet moments away from the prying eyes of the elite, Rhys and Leela exchanged glances laden with meaning, a wordless conversation that hinted at the possibility of redemption or perhaps mutual ruin. As the night progressed, the atmosphere grew more taut, as if the very air was pregnant with the anticipation of revelation. Behind the shimmering glamour, the undercurrents of betrayal and deceit were building to a crescendo that none could ignore. In the days following the gala, Elara immersed herself in research, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the Thorne legacy. Hidden within dusty archives, confidential memos, and encrypted files, she began to piece together a tapestry of corruption and cover-ups. Each document was a thread leading back to Magnus, a man whose empire was constructed on a foundation of secrets, coercion, and unspeakable acts. Her investigation was fraught with danger. Shadowy figures lurked in the margins of her every move, and anonymous threats arrived like whispers in the dead of night. Yet, driven by a determination forged in the fires of personal loss, Elara pressed on. The deeper she dug, the more she discovered about the dark underbelly of the Thorne Empire, a network of exploitation, betrayal, and lies that reached far beyond the gilded walls of their mansion. One fateful evening, as rain battered the city streets and thunder rolled in the distance, Elara found the final piece of the puzzle. In a hidden safe beneath a crumbling wing of an abandoned building, she uncovered documents that detailed Magnus's crimes in excruciating detail. Photographs, audio recordings, and handwritten confessions converged to form a damning indictment of a man who had long evaded justice. The evidence was overwhelming. With trembling hands, Elara read through the records, each page a testament to the lives ruined by Magnus's ambition. The weight of the truth was nearly unbearable, but she knew that revealing it was the only way to dismantle the monstrous legacy that had haunted her for so long. The stage was set for the ultimate reckoning. Magnus Thorne, sensing that his carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble, tightened his grip on his empire. At the Thorne's annual charity ball, a lavish affair attended by the city's most influential figures, tension crackled in the air like static. It was here, amid the shimmering grandeur, that Elara decided to make her move. Dressed in a gown of midnight blue that accentuated her transformed elegance, Leela entered the grand ballroom with the poise of a seasoned socialite. Every eye turned in her direction, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The music, once the joyful accompaniment to an evening of celebration, now carried an undercurrent of foreboding. As the night unfolded, Elara navigated the maze of polite conversation and discreet glances. Behind closed doors, she arranged secret meetings with those disillusioned by the Thorne's ruthless methods, employees, former associates, even rival businessmen whose own fortunes had been tainted by Magnus's influence. Each conversation was a carefully woven thread in a tapestry of rebellion, a plan to expose the corruption that had long festered in the shadows. But time was running out. Magnus had begun to suspect that something was amiss, and his probing questions grew more frequent and pointed. The tension reached its peak when he cornered Leela near a towering column draped in opulent fabrics. "You've been busy," he murmured, his voice low and dangerous. His hand, cold and calculating, rested on her arm. "Did you really think you could outplay me?" In that charged moment, the world around her seemed to slow. Elara's pulse thundered in her ears, her mind racing through the consequences of every choice she had made. But she had come too far to falter now. With a steely resolve, she stepped forward, her eyes meeting his with unyielding defiance. Drawing a deep breath, she seized the microphone placed at the far end of the hall. The chatter in the ballroom quieted to a tense murmur as all eyes fixed upon her. In a voice that blended both vulnerability and fierce determination, she began to speak, a litany of truths that had been silenced for too long. "I stand before you not as the woman you believe me to be, but as someone who has seen the hidden depths of our society's corruption," she declared. "For too long, the powerful have cloaked their misdeeds in the guise of success and refinement. Tonight, I unveil the truth behind the Thorne legacy, a legacy built on exploitation, secrecy, and suffering." Gasps erupted from the gathered elite as documents were projected onto a large screen, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. The revelations rippled through the room like shockwaves, and the carefully maintained veneer of the Thorne Empire began to crumble before their very eyes. Magnus's mask shattered, and in that moment of exposure, his power waned as the room was filled with the raw, undeniable truth. In the chaos that followed, the charity ball transformed into a battleground of shattered illusions. The dignified clinks of champagne glasses were replaced by a cacophony of whispers, shouts, and cries of disbelief. Guests staggered away, their eyes wide with horror, as the intricate web of deceit unraveled in real time. Magnus Thorne, once the epitome of ruthless control, was now reduced to a man exposed. His eyes, once steely and confident, darted around the room in a mixture of fury and despair. The empire he had built with such careful cruelty was collapsing under the weight of its own sins, and no amount of money or influence could stop the tide of revelation. In the midst of the turmoil, Leela vanished into the shadows. Every step she took was laden with the knowledge that her actions had not only dismantled a corrupt dynasty, but had also set in motion a series of irreversible events. She disappeared into the night, leaving behind a legacy of defiance and truth. Rhys, stricken by the magnitude of what had transpired, was left to confront the ruins of his family's reputation. In the days that followed, he wandered the city in a daze, haunted by the echoes of the revelations. The man who had once been a reluctant heir now found himself at a crossroads, torn between the expectations of his bloodline and the yearning for redemption. In the quiet hours after the chaos, Rhys sought solace in the one place he knew best, the forgotten corners of the city where the lost and the lonely found refuge. It was here, in the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, that he encountered Elara once more. Back on the streets, the familiar melody of her guitar filled the night, each note carrying the weight of sacrifice and defiance. Rhys approached her slowly, his eyes searching hers for answers that he could no longer ignore. The world they once knew, the glittering, untouchable world of wealth and power, had been irreparably shattered. And in its place, a raw, unvarnished truth emerged, offering both pain and possibility. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice heavy with emotion. "After everything, why did you do it?" Elara paused, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the first light of dawn began to break. The answer was as complex as the labyrinth of her past. "Because truth is the only song worth singing," she replied softly. "I had to face the ghosts that have haunted me, and to help others face theirs." Her words resonated deeply within Rhys, stirring a determination he had long buried. In that fleeting moment, a bond was forged between the two, a connection built on the shared understanding of loss, redemption, and the courage to defy the status quo. Yet, even as a fragile hope took root, both knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges and sacrifices. In the weeks and months that followed, the fallout from the charity ball reverberated throughout the city. The Thorne Empire, once an unassailable fortress of wealth and power, was now the subject of intense scrutiny and legal battles. Investigations were launched, and the media, once enamored by the opulence of the family, now reveled in the scandal of their undoing. Rhys found himself at the center of a maelstrom of conflicting loyalties. Torn between his duty to his family and his newfound conviction to right past wrongs, he began a painstaking journey of self-discovery. With Elara's unwavering influence echoing in his heart, he sought to dismantle the remnants of his father's corrupt legacy and forge a future defined not by inherited privilege but by accountability and justice. Elara, meanwhile, retreated from the limelight. The transformation into Leela was complete, yet the fire of her true self, raw, unfiltered, and hauntingly beautiful, remained intact. She returned to the streets where music had always been her solace, but now each chord was imbued with the weight of the truth she had fought so hard to reveal. Her songs became anthems of resistance, resonating with those who dared to dream of a world free from tyranny and deceit. Late at night, in quiet moments between performances, she would pore over old photographs and letters, a silent dialogue with her past. Memories of a childhood marred by loss, of a family torn apart by secrets, intertwined with the present. These recollections fueled her determination to not only survive, but to transform pain into a powerful call for justice. Not everyone welcomed the unmasking of the Thorne legacy. As the truth spread, remnants of the old guard sought to silence those who dared speak against them. Anonymous threats escalated, and dark figures began to shadow the steps of both Elara and Rhys. The price of truth, it seemed, was steep. One rain-soaked evening, as Elara returned from a clandestine meeting with an investigative journalist, she found herself pursued. In the labyrinthine alleys of Austin, the echo of hurried footsteps and whispered threats filled the air. The danger was real, a stark reminder that when powerful forces are challenged, the battle is fought not only in courtrooms and boardrooms, but also in the backstreets and forgotten corners of the city. Yet each challenge only steeled her resolve. With every narrow escape, every heart-stopping moment, Elara grew more determined. She began to record her journey, documenting every threat and every act of defiance. Her journal, filled with scribbled notes and raw emotions, became a testament to the struggle against corruption, a chronicle that she hoped would one day serve as a guide for others who dared to stand against the tides of oppression. Rhys, too, faced his own demons. The media's relentless pursuit of his story, and the mounting pressure from both loyalists and reformists, pushed him to the brink. In private moments, he would retreat to his family's sprawling estate, a decaying monument to a legacy built on cruelty, and confront the specters of his past. In the silence of those halls, he vowed to atone for the sins of his forefathers, even if it meant dismantling everything he once held dear. As autumn gave way to winter, the winds of change swept through Austin. The city, once defined by its vibrant yet disparate pockets of wealth and struggle, began to stir with the promise of renewal. Grassroots movements, inspired by the revelations at the Charity Ball, emerged to challenge the old order. Protests and community gatherings became the norm, as ordinary citizens demanded accountability and transparency from those in power. Elara's music, once the solitary echo of a street corner performance, now became the anthem of a burgeoning revolution. She played in underground venues and public squares, her songs resonating with messages of hope, resilience, and defiance. Each performance was a reminder that art had the power to heal wounds, to unite disparate voices in a single harmonious call for justice. In these moments, Rhys and Elara's paths converged more frequently. What began as fleeting encounters turned into long conversations under star-studded skies, where the burdens of legacy were shared and the possibility of a better future was contemplated. Their connection was not born of romance alone, but of a deep mutual understanding, a bond forged in the fires of struggle and the relentless pursuit of truth. Together, they began to collaborate on initiatives aimed at reforming the corrupt structures of the past. Rhys leveraged his insider knowledge to dismantle unethical practices within his own organization, while Elara's relentless pursuit of justice inspired others to join the fight. Their journey was neither smooth nor without sacrifice, but each small victory was a step toward healing a fractured society. Months turned into years, and the echoes of that fateful night at the Charity Ball continued to shape the lives of those who dared to dream of change. The Thorne Empire, once a monolith of power, was gradually replaced by a network of community-driven enterprises that emphasized transparency, fairness, and social responsibility. The transformation was not instantaneous, but the seeds of reform had been sown in the hearts of countless citizens. Elara's music remained a constant thread through it all, a living reminder that the truth, however painful, could be a catalyst for rebirth. She performed at community events, collaborated with local artists, and even mentored young musicians who saw in her a beacon of hope. Her journey from the streets to the corridors of power and back again became a legend whispered in the alleys and celebrated in public forums alike. For Rhys, the metamorphosis was equally profound. No longer shackled by the oppressive legacy of his family, he emerged as a champion for change. His public apologies, his efforts to restore trust, and his willingness to expose his own vulnerabilities resonated deeply with a populace that had long felt betrayed by the powerful elite. Though scars remained, both physical and emotional, he embraced a future built on accountability and empathy. One crisp morning, as the first light of dawn broke over a city reborn, Rhys and Elara found themselves standing side by side on a quiet rooftop overlooking a transformed landscape. The air was cool and filled with promise, a stark contrast to the dark days that had preceded it. "Do you think we did enough?" Rhys asked softly, his voice barely rising above the hum of the awakening city. Elara's eyes, reflecting the hues of the rising sun, held a mixture of weariness and hope. "We started the song," she replied. "And as long as there are voices brave enough to sing, the melody will never truly fade." Their words, simple yet profound, encapsulated the journey of countless souls who had dared to challenge the status quo. It was a reminder that change, while arduous and often painful, was always possible when truth was the guiding light. In the years that followed, the story of Elara, the street musician who became a symbol of defiance, and Rhys, the man who reclaimed his destiny from a legacy of corruption, grew into a modern legend. Their struggles, sacrifices, and ultimate triumph became the subject of books, documentaries, and whispered conversations in both high society and humble neighborhoods. Elara continued to perform on the streets of Austin, her music forever altered by the weight of her experiences. Each song was a living testament to the battles fought in the shadows and the victories won by those who refused to be silenced. Her melodies carried the sorrow of lost time, the joy of hard-won freedom, and the enduring hope that truth could heal even the deepest wounds. Rhys, too, left an indelible mark on the world. His transformation from a reluctant heir to a passionate reformer inspired a generation of young leaders who sought to build institutions grounded in integrity and accountability. In the corridors of power, his story was a constant reminder that the legacy of the past need not dictate the future, that even the most entrenched systems could be challenged and changed. As the city evolved, so did the narrative of justice and redemption. Community centers blossomed in neighborhoods once neglected by the old guard, art and culture flourished in spaces reclaimed from corruption, and the echoes of that fateful charity ball continued to resonate in every corner of society. The Thorne name, once synonymous with ruthless ambition, became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when power is allowed to run unchecked. In a small, intimate venue on a cool summer night, Elara took to the stage once again. The audience, a mix of old friends, newfound allies, and curious strangers, listened in rapt silence as she began a new song, a song of remembrance and rebirth. Her voice, both tender and fierce, carried the weight of every story, every struggle, and every victory. And as the final chord lingered in the air, a hush fell over the room, a collective acknowledgement that the journey of truth was eternal. Standing at the back of the room, Rhys smiled quietly. He knew that while the battle for justice was never truly over, every note sung, every truth revealed, brought them one step closer to a future where the shadows of the past no longer held sway. The legacy of Elara and Rhys, woven into the fabric of a city reborn, would forever be a testament to the power of truth, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring belief that even in the darkest of nights, a single song can light the way to a new dawn. What did you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below on a scale of 0 to 10. How would you rate this story? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell to get all our upcoming stories and check out more inspiring stories here.